What's up YouTube and welcome to a new video. Now the 992 Turbo is entering the market and is doing so at a hefty price. And if you are not into that, then the 991 Turbo might be the one for you. Sure, you won't get the latest tech and performance, but it's still a phenomenal car. Moreover, last year, before the 992 was introduced, I already made a depreciation analysis of the 991 Turbo. And this shows that the market bottomed remarkably quickly. In fact, back then, I tipped the 991.1 Turbo S as an attractive car and forecasted that the 2014 car would only drop by $5,400. Now of course, the 992 Turbos are still holding their value incredibly well. But I don't see any reason as to why this should continue into the future. And with that in mind, let's see how the 991 Turbo market changed and if values indeed remain stable. Remember by the way that you can request an analysis. Simply put the name of the car for which you would like to see an analysis down below in the comment section. Once there are enough requests for a certain car, I will make a video about it. Don't forget to subscribe and click on the notification bell so you get notified when your requested analysis goes live. Alright, let's get this analysis started, and as always we start with an overview of the market. Over here you can see the turbo market split by generation. We have the 996.2, the 997.1.2, 991.1.2 and the 992. And based on the price levels alone, you could have already identified these generations. As you can see, there are big price gaps between them. Look for example at the drop between the 991 and 997. A 2014 991 Turbo has a median price of $121,000, while this is $99,000 for a car from 2012. And it goes of course without saying that there is also a large difference between the 991 and 992. A 2019 991 is around $69,000 cheaper than a 992. Now like I mentioned before, the 992 is holding its value still quite well. But as you can see from the other generations, it will eventually come down in price. In any case, let's now zoom into the 991 market. You are now looking at the 991 market split by the normal turbos and the S models. The exclusive series are not included in this video. Now then, let's cover some general market statistics. There are 198 cars for sale and the median price is $154,000. And for this price you get a relatively fresh example with 13,000 miles. Yet, the price variation is large. Prices start at $95,000 for older examples with more mileage, but go up to $230,000 for low mileage high spec ones. You can also see by looking at the black axis, which display the median price for that model year, that the S's are more expensive. They tend to go for a premium of $24,000. In terms of colors, black, silver and white are by far the most popular. But that's not really a surprise for a 911, isn't it? Now if we split the market by generation, then we can see that the 991.2 is the most popular, as they make up 65% of the market. However, you need to save up a bit if you want the freshest example. The 991.2 tends to cost $44,000 more, and that's quite a significant premium if you ask me. So we have now quite a good overview of the market, and that means that it's time to have a look at the price changes. Did the 991s go up? Did they remain stable? Or did they perhaps go down in value? We will start with a high level overview and then drill down to various market splits, and while we are at it, we also figure out how much the depreciation curves change. The price change for the full market is displayed by these two distributions. We have one for the current market and one for the market 1 year ago. You can see that the current one lays more to the left, and this means that prices decreased. The median price went down from $155,000 to $152,000. And this decrease is statistically confirmed. Hence, it is unlikely that it is the result of chance. Yet, you can see that it is especially the higher end of the market, so the cars which were relatively new last year, which appear to have caused this decrease. At the lower end of the market, you can see that the distribution didn't move at all. Let's dig a bit deeper into that. We will first have a look at the split between the generations and then look at the S versus the base model. The graph over here shows now the model year on the horizontal axis and the price on the vertical axis. On the left we have the 991.1 and on the right we have the 991.2. Now if we start with the latter, then we can see immediately that prices went down. They decreased with $10,000 from $179,000 to $169,000. Yet, you can see that this decrease is caused by the new cars. The 2019 cars dropped with $15,000, but this is of course an aggregate number. Some lost more and some lost less. But nevertheless, $15,000 is an excellent score. It represents a drop of 8%, and this is less than what was predicted by last year's depreciation curve. Now if we focus on the other model years, then we can see that prices remain stable. 2018 cars even showed a slight increase with $1,500, and for 2017 cars this is $800. And again, this is a terrific score. Now as a result of the price decrease in the first year, you can also see that the depreciation curve flattened. The estimated average depreciation per year sits now at $17,700 per year. However, to me, this seems a bit on the high side, given that the new cars lost less last year. But then again, last year was an extraordinary year. But more about that later. Let's have a look now at the 991.1 market. Here we can clearly see that the orange curve lays above the blue one. Prices did then also go up with $5,000 from $120,000 to $125,000. And you can see that this increase goes for all mileages and is therefore carried across the market. It is then also so that the increase is statistically confirmed. But could it be so that these price changes are driven by either the S or the base models? Let's drill down one step further and figure that out. At the top we have now the S models still split by generation, and at the bottom we have the base models also split by generation. Now this graph reveals that the patterns on a detailed level are quite similar to the ones at a more abstract level. Both the 991.2 S and base models display a price decrease for model year 2019 and a stable development after that. Meanwhile, in the 991.1 market, we can see that the price increase goes for both the S and the base model. What I by the way also need to mention here, but forgot to do so earlier, is that in 1 year time, supply shrunk tremendously. 1 year ago there were 536 cars for sale versus only 200 now. And this of course might explain the stable price development. Now one thing which we didn't consider yet is the mileage. Now as you would expect, the mileage went up over the last year. But what about the depreciation per 1000 miles? That is what we will figure out now, but before we do so, please remember to support the channel by smashing that like button. Thanks. Over here you can see now the same graph as before, but with the mileage on the horizontal axis instead of the model year. Naturally, the lowest mileage examples you can find in the 991.2 market. They tend to have a mileage which is 6,000 miles lower. But let's first have a look at the 991.1 market. For both the S and the base models we can see that the orange line lays above the blue one. And this means that for a car with a certain mileage, you need to pay now more than you had to do so 1 year ago. The difference is not night and day, but given that you would expect the orange line to fall below the blue one, this is an excellent result. Now in terms of depreciation per 1000 miles, nothing really changed. The curve just shifted up without really changing its slope. It sits at $551 per 1000 miles or 0.4%. Let's look a bit deeper into the 991.2 market. Now if we look at the S models, then we can see first of all that the new cars disappeared from the market. And like we saw earlier, this pushed prices down from model year 2020. Yet over here we are looking at the mileages and not the model year. So let's make this comparison a bit more fair and remove those new cars. Now we can see that the used S prices remain stable. There is no broad price increase or decrease visible. In terms of depreciation, the 991.2 loses double the amount of the 991.1. The S sits at $1,200 and the base at $1,600 per 1000 miles driven. Now just as with all of these average numbers, it only gives you a broad indication. The number is much higher for the low mileage cars and much lower for the high mileage cars. Now finally, one thing to keep in mind here is that even though that the absolute depreciation per 1000 miles number is higher, mileage explains more of the price variance for the 991.1 than that it does for the 991.2. Even more so than the model year does. And the reason for this is of course the relatively flat depreciation per year curve for the 991.1. And with that we will wrap up and conclude. Overall I think that value-wise the 991 Turbo did really well. I expected this for the 991.1, but not necessarily for the 991.2. Last year it seemed to be so that the .1 bottomed out a lot more. Now in terms of price change, it is then also this generation which saw a value increase. For the 991.2, it depends very much on which specific segment of the .2 market you are looking at. The new cars obviously came down in price since last year. When you buy a new car, there is no way around it. It will come down in price. However, the used 991.2 market remains stable. And this is something which 1 year ago I didn't expect. Now in hindsight, of course, this makes perfect sense. It is indeed so that we have now the new 992 Turbo on the market, but supply is still relatively limited. You can even find stories online of people paying overs for a 992 Turbo just to have it immediately available. Now the consequence of this is that people who want to upgrade from a 991 to a 992 are not able to do so, and the supply of the 991 is limited. Once the 992 becomes more broadly available, it could be so that we see a slight price decrease in the 991 market. But I don't expect any major price movements based on this. And with that we arrive at the end of the video. Now if you enjoyed this video, please remember to support the channel by smashing that like button. As always, a huge thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next week for a new analysis.